Chapter 1. Pain wakes me before sound does. My ribs feel like they caved in. Gravel bites into my back. The sky above me spins in slow circles, and I can't remember how I got flat on my back next to a rusted train track. Someone is calling my name, not out loud. Inside my head, over and over, like an echo that won't stop. Caelan, Caelan, Caelan. I try to move my hand and it barely twitches. My phone is gone. My jacket is torn at the shoulder. And there's a folded piece of paper sitting on my chest, like someone placed it there on purpose, after they were done with me. Hi viewers, if you were the Omega lying here right now, what's the first thing you'd want to remember before you black out again? Tell me in the comments. 3 sets of boots crunch against gravel. Fast. Getting closer. I know those footsteps. I've spent 3 years memorizing the rhythm of them, the way Kiernan walks like every step is a decision, the way Riven moves, like he's already calculating 5 outcomes ahead, the way Soren somehow makes urgency sound unbothered. Caelan. Kiernan's voice cracks on my name. I've never heard it crack before. I try to open my eyes wider. 3 blurred shapes crouch over me. Riven's hands hover near my neck, checking for a pulse he already knows is there, because I'm talking. Barely, but talking. Don't, I manage. Trust the cameras. I don't know why I say it. The words arrive in my mouth before my brain catches up to them, like something in me already knew before I did. Soren goes still. That scares me more than the pain in my ribs. Soren is never still. My vision fades again. When it comes back, red and blue lights are painting the depot walls, and Riven is holding my wrist so tight it almost hurts more than the rest of me combined. Who did this? Kiernan says. It isn't a question. It's a demand aimed at the entire world. I want to answer him. I want to tell him everything, but I don't have anything to tell. 1 second. I was walking to my car after leaving the estate 2 hours early. No meeting on my calendar, no reason to leave at all that I can explain. The next second, headlights. Then nothing. Then gravel and pain, and 3 brothers who look like they've aged a decade in the last 20 minutes. The paramedics lift me onto a stretcher. Kiernan doesn't let go of my hand until they force him to. At the hospital, I drift in and out. I hear pieces. My wallet is untouched. My watch, worth more than most people's yearly income, is still on my wrist. Nothing was stolen except my phone, and somehow that detail bothers Riven more than anything else. They didn't want money, he says to Kiernan, low, like he thinks I can't hear him. They wanted something on that phone. Soren stands near the window with his arms crossed, staring at nothing. He hasn't cracked one joke since they found me. Not one. That's when I understand how serious this is. More than the ribs, more than the blood I can taste in my mouth. A nurse checks my chart. She frowns at something and steps out to find a doctor. Kiernan notices. He always notices. What is it? He asks, following her into the hallway. I strain to listen. I catch fragments. Someone accessed my medical file. 10 minutes before we arrived. That makes no sound sense. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody except whoever left me here. Riven steps back into the room, jaw tight, phone already in his hand. The cameras around the depot, he says. All 4 of them went dark at the exact same time. 90 seconds before backup found you. 90 seconds. Someone had 90 seconds to leave that note on my chest and vanish, before anyone could see their face. I reach for the folded paper on the tray beside my bed, the one they found on me. My fingers are shaking too badly to unfold it myself, so Kiernan does it for me, his hands steadier than mine, but not by much. 6 words written in handwriting I don't recognize. You should have left them alone. I stare at the sentence until the letters blur together. I haven't left anyone alone. I haven't touched anything that wasn't already sitting on my desk, waiting for approval. Boring and ordinary and mine to manage. Left who alone? Soren finally says, turning from the window. His voice comes out rough, nothing like his usual easy tone. I open my mouth to say I don't know, and I mean it. I really don't know. But somewhere underneath the pain, in a place I can't quite reach yet, something tells me I'm lying to myself without even realizing it. The machine beside my bed beeps steady and calm, completely at odds with the panic sitting in the room. Riven's phone buzzes. He looks at the screen, and whatever color was left in his face drains out completely. What? Kiernan says. Riven turns the screen toward him without a word. I can't see what's on it from where I'm lying, but I watch Kiernan's hand tighten around the edge of my hospital bed rail until his knuckles go white, and I understand, somewhere deep in my aching chest, that whatever just landed on that screen is only the beginning. Chapter 2. I don't remember the drive home from the hospital, only that Kiernan carried me from the car himself, and Riven wouldn't let the elevator doors close until he'd checked the hallway twice. 3 days pass before anyone tells me anything real. I notice the silences first. Conversations that stop the second I enter a room. Files close too quickly on laptop screens. Soren, usually the one who fills every quiet moment with something sharp and funny, now just watches me like he's waiting for me to break apart in front of him. "What aren't you telling me?" I ask Kiernan on the third night, my ribs still wrapped tight under my shirt. He doesn't answer right away. That's answer enough. "You three have kept me safe for 3 years, I say. I've read every contract, managed every account, sat in every room you didn't want witnesses in. And now you're hiding something from me while I'm the one who almost died." Kiernan's jaw tightens. "It's for your protection." That's what people say right before they lose someone's trust completely. He doesn't argue. He just looks at me like the words landed somewhere he didn't expect, somewhere soft that he usually keeps locked away. Riven finally breaks first. He slides his laptop toward me across the kitchen island, the one in the estate's private wing where only the 4 of us are allowed. "The footage from the depot," he says. "There's a gap. 17 minutes missing. Whoever removed it knew exactly which minutes mattered." 17 minutes. Not the whole night. Not a clumsy mistake. A surgical cut. That means whoever did this understands our system, I say slowly. Understands it well enough to know precisely what to erase. Riven nods once, which narrows the list of people who could have done it. How narrow? Narrow enough that it isn't a stranger. The kitchen feels colder after that. I pull my sleeves down over my hands. A habit from childhood I thought I'd outgrown. Later that night, unable to sleep, I find Riven sitting outside my bedroom door in the hallway, back against the wall, tie loosened, eyes fixed on nothing. "You don't have to do that," I tell him. "Do what?" "Guard my door like I'm made of glass. Someone needs to watch the hallway. You could have hired someone." He looks up at me then, and something passes over his face I've never seen from him before, something unguarded. I don't trust anyone else to do it right. I don't know what to say to that, so I say nothing, and the silence between us stretches longer than it should, heavier than it should, until I finally step back into my room and close the door before I do something foolish, like ask him to stay. The next morning, Kiernan calls a private meeting. Just the 4 of us, no security, no staff. "We traced the access," Riven says, pulling up a screen on the wall. "Someone used a legitimate internal authorization to disable the cameras and pull my medical file." "Legitimate," I repeat. "Not stolen. Not stolen," he confirms. Which means whoever did this didn't need to hack anything. They already had permission. Soren finally speaks, arms crossed tight over his chest. "How many people have that level of access?" 4, Riven says. "The 3 of us." "And," Kiernan says, voice low, "one more." The name appears on the screen. Someone who has worked inside this family for over 20 years. Someone who has sat at holiday dinners, who has known me since the week I started, who taught me half of what I know about running this household without asking questions. I read the name twice, certain I'm misreading it. "That's impossible," I say. Nobody responds. The silence in the room says what none of them are ready to say out loud. I press my palm flat against the counter to steady myself, my heart slamming against ribs that are still healing from whatever happened 3 nights ago in that depot. Because if that name is real, if that authorization truly belongs to the person I think it does, then someone I've trusted for years has been lying to my face the entire time, close enough to touch, close enough to hurt me, without me ever seeing it coming. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a memory stirs, faint and half-formed, a memory I can't quite pull into focus yet. A voice, familiar, saying my name the way only one other person used to say it, a person who has been dead for 7 years. Chapter 3. 3 days after learning the name, I still can't make myself say it out loud. Instead, I do what I've always done when the world gets too loud. I work. I sit at the long table in the estate's private office, and I go through records, schedules, transfers, anything that might explain what's happening to me. It turns out my mind remembers more than my mouth admits. I remember which accounts moved unusual amounts in the last 6 months. I remember which meetings got rescheduled without explanation. I remember a driver who was replaced twice in 1 month for no listed reason. None of it seemed strange at the time. All of it seems strange now. "You're better at this than half our analysts," Riven says, watching me lay out 3 months of transport logs side by side. I've had practice noticing things nobody once noticed. Kiernan enters with a folder in his hand, his face unreadable, which for him means something's wrong. "Security pulled a wider search," he says. "Someone has been tracking you for months, Caelan. Not just the night of the attack." My stomach drops. "Tracking me how?" "Your schedule, your transportation, your medical visits, every meeting you've taken outside the estate." He slides the folder toward me. Pages and pages of my own life, documented by someone who was never supposed to be watching. I flip through it with hands that won't stay steady. Dates going back further than I expected. A meeting I don't remember attending. A restaurant I don't remember visiting. Why would someone study me for months before doing anything? I ask, more to myself than to them. Soren, leaning against the doorway, finally speaks. "Why didn't you tell us someone might be watching you?" "Because I didn't know anyone was. And," I add, quieter, "because you three have always had enemies. I assumed if anyone was watching this house, it was watching you, not me." Soren goes quiet in a way that unsettles me more than his usual sharp comments ever could. He doesn't argue. He just looks away, out toward the hallway, like he's chewing on something he isn't ready to say. Riven pulls one page from the folder and sets it in front of me. A grainy surveillance photo. Me, standing outside a coffee shop 3 weeks before the attack, talking to an elderly man I have absolutely no memory of meeting. "I've never seen him before," I say. "Look again," Riven says. I lean closer. Something about the man's face tugs at a part of my memory I usually keep locked away. The shape of his jaw, the way he tilts his head slightly to the left when he listens. My chest goes tight. "That's not possible," I whisper. Riven runs the image through facial recognition, while I sit frozen at the table. The system takes less than a minute to return a match, and when it does, the room goes silent enough that I can hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. The name that appears belongs to my grandfather. My mother's father, a man who vanished from my life before I turned 10. A man I was told died quietly 7 years ago in a hospital 2 states away. A man whose funeral I was too young and too far away to attend. "He's dead," I say, my voice barely above a breath. "He's been dead for 7 years. Kiernan takes the photo from Riven's hand and studies it, his expression darkening. "Then who is this?" Nobody answers. Nobody can answer. I press my fingers against my temples, trying to force the memory further, trying to remember anything about that coffee shop, that conversation, that man's voice. But there's nothing there. A blank space where a memory should be, carved out clean and deliberate, like someone reached inside my mind and removed exactly what they didn't want me to keep. "Caelan." Kiernan's voice is careful now, gentle in a way I'm not used to from him. "Is there any chance he's still alive?" I want to say no. I want to say the idea is impossible, that I saw the obituary myself, that my mother cried for a week after the funeral she made me stay home from. But sitting here, staring at a photograph of myself, standing across from a man who's supposed to be buried in a cemetery 2 states away, I can't make myself say the word impossible with any confidence at all. Because if he's alive, someone has been lying to me since I was a child. And if he's dead, then someone wanted me to believe I met a ghost, wanted it badly enough to plan it, photograph it, and use it against me 3 weeks before I nearly died in an abandoned train depot with a note on my chest telling me I should have left them alone. Chapter 4. I refuse to talk about my family for 2 full days. Every time Kiernan brings it up, I change the subject. Every time Riven tries to ask a careful question, I find a reason to leave the room. It isn't that I don't want answers. It's that answers mean opening a door I sealed shut a long time ago, back when I was still a kid, learning not to ask why my mother flinched every time someone mentioned her father's name. Soren is the one who finally corners me, late at night, in the kitchen, where I've been avoiding sleep with a mug of tea I haven't touched. "You've been running from this for 2 days," he says, dropping into the seat across from me. "I'm not running, I'm working. You're doing both badly." His voice softens, losing the edge I've grown used to from him. "Talk to me. Not as your employer, just talk." I stare at the steam rising off my tea for a long moment before I let myself speak. My mother never let me ask about him. Anytime I brought up my grandfather, she'd change the subject so fast it gave me whiplash. I always assumed it was grief. Now I don't know what to assume. "What happened to her?" Soren asks carefully. "Your mother. She died when I was 16. Car accident, they told me." I was never allowed to ask more than that either. Soren doesn't push further. He just sits with me in the quiet. And for the first time since the depot, I don't feel like I have to hold every piece of myself together on my own. The next morning, Riven brings news that changes everything again. "The man in the photo isn't your grandfather," he says, setting his tablet on the table. "He's an impersonator. Facial structure is close, but not exact. Someone paid for a resemblance close enough to fool a grieving grandson from a distance." Relief and fear crash into me at the same time. Relief because a ghost isn't walking around Chicago. Fear because someone planned this with enough precision to know exactly which face would break through my defenses. "Why?" I ask. "Why go through that much trouble just to make me believe I saw him?" "To manipulate your memory," Riven says. "To make you believe whatever's happening to you is tied to your family, not to us." I look up sharply. "You think it's not." Kiernan enters the room then, and for once, he doesn't try to soften what he says next. "We're afraid it might be tied to both." "Then tell me why," I say, standing, my voice louder than I intend. "If I'm the one being targeted, I deserve to know why. I've spent 3 years trusting you three, with everything. I think I've earned the truth." Kiernan holds my gaze, and something in him finally gives way. "We found evidence years ago that our father hid parts of this family's history from us. We never dug into it because we assumed it wouldn't touch our lives. We were wrong. And you think my mother is somehow connected to whatever he hid? We don't know yet," he admits, "but someone clearly believes she is." The room falls quiet, heavy with everything none of us can fully explain yet. I press my palm against the table to steady myself, my mind racing back through every conversation, every warning, every strange silence from my childhood. And then it comes to me, sudden and sharp, a memory I didn't know I still had. The night of the attack, before the pain, before the headlights, a voice whispering something in my ear, low and familiar, a phrase I haven't heard since I was a small child, hiding under my bed during a thunderstorm. "Quiet now, little fox. Nobody can find you if you're quiet." My mother's voice, her exact words. The phrase she used only when she wanted me to hide. "Caelan," Riven says, noticing my face go pale. "What is it?" "I remember something," I say slowly, my pulse hammering. "From that night, someone said my mother's phrase to me, the one she used when she wanted me to hide from something dangerous." Kiernan steps closer. "You're certain?" "I'm certain." My hands start shaking again, worse than before. But that phrase was only ever said inside our old apartment. Nobody outside our family should know it. I stop mid-breath, my mind catching on something that makes my stomach twist violently. Except I have heard it recently, not from a memory, not from years ago. I heard it inside this estate. Chapter 5. The words hit me so hard I have to sit back down. "Where?" Kiernan asks immediately, crossing the room toward me. "Where did you hear it?" I close my eyes, forcing myself back through the last few weeks, past the fog the accident left behind. A hallway, late evening, a voice drifting from a room I wasn't supposed to be near. "The old wing," I say slowly, "near your father's private study. I walked past it maybe 2 weeks before the attack." I thought I imagined it. Riven and Kiernan exchange a look I can't read. "That wing has been sealed since our father died," Riven says. "Nobody goes in there without express permission." "Then someone went in without permission," I say. "Or someone has permission none of us know about." Kiernan doesn't wait. He leads us down a corridor I've walked past 100 times without ever questioning the locked door at the end of it. His key doesn't work. Riven has to override the electronic lock manually, and when the door finally opens, dust rises into the air like the room has been holding its breath for years. Inside, shelves line every wall, filled with boxes, ledgers, and files stretching back decades. Kiernan's father built this family's empire on secrets, and apparently, he kept every single one of them stored exactly where nobody would think to look. We split up. I take the shelf nearest the window, mostly out of instinct, and that's where I find it. A thin folder with my mother's maiden name written on the tab. My hands go cold before I even open it. Inside is a legal document, yellowed with age, dense with language I have to read twice to understand. A succession agreement, drafted decades ago, outlining property holdings the Veyron family assumed belonged entirely to them. At the bottom, in handwriting I recognize instantly because I spent my childhood watching her sign school permission slips with the same careful loops, is my mother's signature, listed not as an owner. As a witness, Kiernan, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. He crosses the room fast. Riven and Soren follow. She witnessed this, I say, holding the document out with shaking hands. Decades ago, before I was even born. Kiernan takes the paper, scanning it, his face shifting from confusion to something closer to alarm. This ties your mother's signature to property rights our family has controlled for generations. Which means, Riven says slowly, your family may have legal standing to something we've always assumed was entirely ours. I stare at the document until the words blur. This isn't why someone almost killed me. This can't be the whole reason. A property dispute doesn't explain a note that says, you should have left them alone. Doesn't explain months of surveillance. Doesn't explain a fake grandfather designed to break my memory wide open. Then I notice it. One line near the bottom of the page has been blacked out entirely. The ink so thick it's clearly deliberate, clearly recent. Someone tried to remove this, I say, running my finger along the edge of the redaction. And not decades ago. This ink is fresh. Kiernan's expression hardens. Which means someone knew we'd eventually search this room. Something shifts in the air between us, an understanding settling in that none of us say out loud yet. Whoever is doing this isn't reacting to us. They're anticipating us, staying one step ahead the entire time. Kiernan sits across from me, his usual composure cracking slightly at the edges. Caelan, I need you to understand something. We inherited this entire empire without ever being told the full truth about how our father built it. If your mother's signature matters this much to someone, it's possible we've been living inside the same lie you have. The idea unsettles me more than I expect. I've spent years assuming the danger in this house came from outside it. I never once considered that the brothers protecting me might be just as blind as I am. Riven, meanwhile, has been quietly searching through the rest of the folder, and his silence stretches long enough that I finally look up. There's more, he says, holding out another page. Your mother wasn't only a witness to this agreement. She was investigating something. Notes here reference a name, someone she calls the family's former legal guardian. Investigating what? I ask. We don't know yet, he says. But according to this, her investigation ended 3 days before she died. The room goes completely silent. And the last person she contacted, Riven continues, voice tightening, based on the internal records here, is the exact same person whose authorization disabled our security system the night you were attacked. I feel the floor tilt beneath me, even though I know I'm still sitting perfectly still. Someone my mother once trusted enough to contact days before her death is the same person who, decades later, walked into this house and nearly ended mine. Chapter 6. Riven's words hang in the air, and I can't breathe past them. The same person my mother trusted. The same person who disabled our security system. My hands go numb around the folder still resting on my lap. We need to talk to him, Kiernan says, already moving toward the door. Now, we find him in the east study, sitting behind a desk he's used for 20 years, reading glasses perched on his nose like it's any other ordinary afternoon. His name is Franklin Doss, and he's worked for this family since before the triplets were born. He taught me how to file quarterly reports. He brought me soup the week I had the flu 2 winters ago. Kiernan, he says warmly, setting down his pen. What's this about? Kiernan slides the folder across the desk without a word. Franklin's eyes flick down to my mother's name on the tab. and for half a second, something crosses his face. Gone so fast I almost convince myself I imagined it. I don't know what you think this proves, he says calmly. Your authorization disabled the cameras the night Caelan was attacked, Riven says. That's not a theory. That's a fact pulled directly from our system logs. Franklin removes his glasses slowly. Your father asked me to keep certain protocols flexible. I've had that access for decades. It doesn't mean I used it. Then who did? I ask, stepping forward. Because someone did. He looks at me, and for a moment, his expression softens in a way that almost convinces me he's telling the truth. Caelan, your mother was a troubled woman. I liked her, I did. But she chased shadows that weren't there. Whatever she wrote in that folder, it isn't evidence of anything real. You knew her well enough to have an opinion about her mental state, I say slowly. That's more than you've ever told me before. He hesitates, just barely, and mentions an event, a family gathering he claims happened the spring after my mother's death, describing details like he was there. Except my mother died in the fall, not the spring. You said spring, I say quietly. His face goes still. You said an event happened the spring after she died. But she died in October. There was no spring after that year, not for 6 more months. Nobody moves. Franklin's jaw tightens, and for the first time in 20 years, I watch him struggle to find words. A simple mistake, he says finally. Memory isn't perfect, but it isn't a simple mistake. It's a timeline that doesn't hold together, a story rewritten so many times that even the person telling it forgot which version was real. We leave the study without answers, but the silence between the 4 of us on the walk back says everything words can't. He's lying, I say once we're alone. About something. Maybe not everything, but something. Kiernan wants to confront him again immediately, push harder, force the truth out through pressure alone. Riven wants to gather more evidence first, build a case too solid to argue with. Soren, uncharacteristically quiet, finally speaks up. If we tear each other apart deciding how to handle this, whoever's behind it wins without lifting another finger, he says. That might be exactly what they want, us fighting each other instead of them. The room goes still as his words settle over us. He's right, I can feel it. The chaos, the confusion, the doubt planted between people who are supposed to trust each other completely, none of it is an accident. It's a weapon, and it's working exactly the way someone designed it to work. Later that night, Kiernan finds me in the garden, the cold air biting through my sweater. He doesn't say anything at first, he just stands beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touch. I keep thinking about what you said, he tells me eventually, that we've earned your trust. I'm starting to wonder if we've earned it the way we think we have. I look at him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. We protected you, he continues, but we also kept things from you. Maybe that isn't protection at all. Maybe that's just another version of control. I don't answer right away. Something about hearing him say it out loud, admitting it without me having to force the words out of him, softens something tight in my chest. Before I can respond, my phone buzzes against the stone bench beside me. A message from a number I don't recognize. I open it slowly, my heart already pounding before I read a single word. Ask what happened to your mother the night she stopped trusting them. I stare at the screen, my breath catching hard in my throat, and when I look up at Kiernan, I can tell from his face that he saw it too. Chapter 7. My hands won't stop shaking as I read the message a second time, a third time, like the words might change if I stare long enough. Trace it, Kiernan says, already reaching for his own phone. Riven takes mine gently and starts working before I even process what's happening. Untraceable, Riven says within minutes. Routed through 6 different servers. Whoever sent this knows exactly what they're doing. I sit down hard on the garden bench, the cold stone seeping through my jeans. The night she stopped trusting them. Not the night she died. The night she stopped trusting them. Like there was a specific moment, a specific betrayal that changed everything for my mother before it ever touched me. I spend the next 2 days digging through everything I can find about her. Old records, photographs stored in a box I haven't opened since I was a teenager, a journal I never knew she kept, hidden inside a hollowed-out book on a shelf in my childhood bedroom, still boxed up in storage from years ago. What I find isn't a financial crime. It's something worse. My mother had discovered a pattern of manipulated identities inside the Veyron organization. False records. People who were paid to disappear quietly. Their names erased from company history like they'd never existed at all. She wasn't investigating money. She was investigating people who'd been made to vanish. I sit on my bedroom floor, surrounded by pages of her handwriting, my chest aching in a way that has nothing to do with my healing ribs. She kept me away from certain people, I whisper, mostly to myself. My whole childhood, she kept me away from specific names. I thought it was grief. It wasn't grief, it was fear. Soren, sitting across from me on the floor, picks up one of the photographs and studies it carefully. This explains why they were watching you for months before the attack. They weren't trying to kill you right away. They wanted to know if you remembered anything she told you as a child. The realization hits me like a physical blow. All those months of surveillance, all that patience, weren't about eliminating a threat. They were about testing one, waiting to see if a memory buried deep inside me would surface before they decided what to do about it. I close my eyes, and a memory rises up unprompted, sharp and clear in a way it's never been before. A room, a photograph on a wall, 3 young boys standing together, barely older than toddlers. My mother standing beside them, younger than I ever knew her, smiling in a way I never saw in real life. I remember a photograph, I say slowly, opening my eyes, from when I was very small. My mother standing with 3 boys. I always assumed they were cousins or family friends. Kiernan, who has just walked in, goes rigid. 3 boys, yes. Caelan, that's us. Before we became heirs, before our father built everything he built. His voice comes out unsteady, something I've rarely heard from him. Our mother died when we were young. We don't have many photographs from that era. If your mother is in one we've never seen, there's someone else in it, I interrupt, the memory sharpening further as I speak. A 4th adult, standing slightly behind all of you. Their face has been cut out of every copy I've ever seen. The room falls into stunned silence. Deliberately removed, Riven says quietly, more to himself than to any of us. I press my palms against my eyes, trying to force the memory into focus, trying to see the shape of that missing face, but it stays frustratingly out of reach, like something that was scrubbed clean on purpose, leaving only an outline where a person used to be. Whoever is doing this isn't trying to destroy your family, I say slowly, the pieces finally clicking together in a way that makes my stomach turn. If they wanted to destroy you, they could have done it years ago. They're trying to take control of it instead. Kiernan meets my eyes, and for the first time since this entire nightmare began, I see real fear on his face. Not for himself, but for me. For what this means. For how deep this goes. Someone has been circling this family for decades, he says. Waiting. Watching. And now they think you're the key to something they've wanted this whole time. I think about my mother, hiding photographs, keeping me away from names she never explained, dying 3 days after she stopped trusting whoever appears in that missing space in the picture. And I understand, with a certainty that settles cold and heavy in my chest, that I'm not just a target because of what I might remember. I'm a target because of who I might become if I remember it. Chapter 8. I make my decision before anyone can talk me out of it. I want to be bait, I say, standing in the middle of the study, my voice steadier than I feel. Kiernan's response is immediate. Absolutely not. You don't get to decide that for me. I keep my voice calm, even as my pulse races. This is my mother's mystery, my memory, my life that almost ended in that depot. If I sit here waiting for someone else to catch whoever's doing this, I'll spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Riven crosses his arms. It's too dangerous. Everything about this has been dangerous since the night I woke up next to those train tracks, I say. At least this way, we control when it happens instead of waiting for them to choose again. Soren, quiet for once, finally nods. He's right, and we'll be watching every second. Kiernan stares at me for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. I expect him to argue further. Instead, he exhales slowly. If we do this, he says, it happens on your terms, not ours. Something in his voice tells me this costs him more than he's letting on, this choice to let me decide instead of deciding for me. It's the first time since I've known him that he's chosen to trust my judgment over his own instinct to control every outcome. We build the trap carefully over the next 2 days. I leak a message through a channel Riven sets up, hinting that I've recovered a memory connected to my mother's investigation, something specific enough to draw attention, vague enough to avoid revealing what we actually know. The response comes faster than any of us expect. A meeting location, a time, instructions for me to come alone. I don't go alone, of course. Riven's security team spreads through the surrounding blocks, invisible, watching every angle. Kiernan and Soren stay close by, connected through an earpiece hidden under my collar. The location is an old warehouse near the river, the kind of place that feels abandoned even in daylight. I walk inside exactly as instructed, my heart hammering so hard I'm sure the earpiece picks up the sound of it. Nobody's there. "Report," Riven's voice says quietly in my ear. "Talk to me, Caelan." "Empty," I whisper. "It's completely empty." Then the lights inside the warehouse cut out entirely, plunging me into total darkness. "Riven," I say, my voice sharper now, fear creeping into every word. "Riven, talk to me." Static answers instead of his voice. Kiernan, Soren, anyone, nothing. My phone buzzes in my pocket, the screen the only light in the entire building. A message appears, and my blood turns to ice reading it. "You should have asked why your mother trusted me." I freeze completely. That phrase, the exact phrasing my mother used, the private shorthand she taught me as a child, words that should have died with her, words nobody outside our tiny family should ever have known. The lights flicker back on suddenly, and Kiernan bursts through the warehouse doors, with Riven and Soren right behind him, weapons drawn, faces pale with panic. "Are you hurt?" Kiernan says, reaching me first, hands running over my shoulders, like he's checking for damage he can't see. "They anticipated everything," I say, my voice shaking. "The surveillance blackout, the timing, all of it. They knew exactly what we were planning." Riven's face goes tight with fury. "That means they had access to our internal communications. This wasn't outside interference. This came from someone close enough to hear our plans before we executed them." I show them the message on my phone, and I watch understanding settle over all three of their faces at once, cold and undeniable. "That phrase," Kiernan says slowly, "only someone your mother trusted completely would know that. Which means," I whisper, my voice barely holding together, "whoever is doing this isn't some outside enemy circling this family from a distance." Soren finishes the thought before I can, his voice hollow. "They've been inside our circle this entire time. The four of us stand together in that empty warehouse, the silence stretching heavy and cold around us, each of us running through every face we trust, every name we never questioned, wondering which one of them has been lying, since before any of us even knew there was a lie to find." Chapter 9. Franklin Doss is gone by morning. His office sits untouched, his desk drawer left half open, and the moment I see it, I know we won't find him waiting behind that door ever again. "He knew we were closing in," Riven says, scanning through the last of Franklin's digital activity before the trail goes completely dark. "He wiped everything he could reach remotely. But Franklin isn't the mastermind. He's a piece, not the whole picture. It takes another full day of digging, cross-referencing decades of financial records, before Riven finds the thread that finally pulls everything together. The name belongs to someone none of us suspected, someone whose loyalty to this family always looked absolute from the outside. A cousin on the Triplets' father's side, a man named Desmond Veyron, quiet, unassuming, someone who attended every family function and never once raised a voice or drew attention to himself. "He believed the empire should have gone to his branch of the family," Kiernan says, reading through records Riven pulled from a shell account tied directly to Desmond. "Our father cut him out of the succession decades ago. He spent every year since pretending that decision never bothered him. He manipulated the evidence," I say, piecing it together out loud. "Made it look like the answer was tied to my mother's succession agreement, so you three would distrust me instead of him. He orchestrated the fake grandfather. He planned the surveillance. He arranged the attack. And his biggest mistake," Riven says, "was assuming you'd stay quiet and scared instead of fighting back. We don't confront him with force. We confront him with everything we've gathered, documents, witnesses, Financial trails stretching back years, laid out publicly, in front of the family board he always hoped to control someday. His protection, built on decades of quiet trust, disappears the moment the truth becomes impossible to deny. Justice doesn't come loud. It comes methodical, complete, and absolute. Afterward, standing in the same garden where I first read that anonymous message, I finally say what's been sitting heavy in my chest for weeks. You protected me, I tell the three of them, but you also kept things from me. Both of those things happened at the same time, and I need you to understand that hurt me almost as much as anything Desmond did. None of them argue. None of them try to explain it away. You're right, Kiernan says simply. We should have trusted you the way you've trusted us. Soren steps closer, his usual humor gone completely from his voice. For what it's worth, Caelan, you stopped being just our assistant a long time ago. I think we all knew that, and were too afraid to say it out loud. Riven doesn't say anything at first. He just reaches for my hand, gentle, uncertain in a way I've never seen from him before, and when I don't pull away, something in his shoulders finally relaxes. If anything happens between us, I say quietly, looking between all three of them, it happens because I choose it. Not because of fear, not because of gratitude, not because of anything except what I actually want. That's fair, Kiernan says. That's more than fair. For the first time since that 1 a.m. phone call changed everything, I feel something close to peace settle over the four of us standing together in that garden. Then I remember the archive, one box I never finished searching, tucked behind the shelf where I found my mother's succession agreement. Something about it has been sitting in the back of my mind since the day we found that folder, an itch I never scratched. I need to check something, I say, already turning toward the estate. Kiernan follows without asking why. Riven and Soren trail close behind, and something in their silence tells me they feel it too, the sense that this isn't quite finished yet, that the danger might be gone but the truth still has one more layer left to give up. We reach the archive, dust still hanging faintly in the air from weeks ago. I move straight to the shelf, to the box I never opened, and my fingers find an old photograph tucked between two ledgers, exactly where instinct told me it would be. I pull it out slowly. My mother, the Veyron brothers' father, 3 boys who would grow into the men standing behind me right now, and someone else. Someone standing just behind them, someone whose face I recognize the second I see it, someone who is supposed to have died decades before I was ever born. My hands start shaking again. Chapter 10. The photograph trembles in my grip, and for a moment, I can't make my mouth form a single word. Kiernan steps beside me, looking down at the image. Caelan, who is that? I don't answer right away. I flip the photograph over instead, and there, in handwriting I don't recognize but somehow feel deep in my chest anyway, is a single sentence. If Caelan ever finds this, tell him I was wrong about who was protecting him. The room goes completely silent. Riven takes the photograph gently from my hands, studying the face behind my mother, behind the young Veyron brothers, a face that shouldn't exist in any photograph taken this recently, according to everything we've been told. This person is supposed to be dead, I say quietly, just like Desmond wanted me to believe my grandfather was alive when he wasn't. Now I'm looking at someone who's supposed to be gone, standing right here in a photograph that feels recent enough to touch. Soren exhales slowly. One conspiracy closes, and another one opens right behind it. Nobody has an answer for that. Not tonight. Maybe not for a long time, but something has shifted inside me. Something I can feel settling into place, even without every answer laid out clean in front of me. I'm not the same person who woke up beside those train tracks weeks ago, confused and terrified and certain the world made sense in ways it clearly didn't. I spent my whole life believing silence was safety. My mother taught me that lesson without ever meaning to, hiding names, avoiding questions, protecting me by keeping me in the dark. I understand now that her silence wasn't protection at all. It was fear wearing protection's clothes, and it cost her the chance to prepare me for exactly the danger she was trying to shield me from. I won't make that same mistake. Over the following weeks, the Veyron organization changes in ways nobody expected. Kiernan begins rebuilding the family's foundation around transparency instead of inherited secrecy, tearing down decades of quiet arrangements that once protected people like Desmond long enough for them to become dangerous. Riven audits every hidden account, every buried file, determined that nothing this family owns will ever again be built on a lie nobody's allowed to question. My role changes too. I'm no longer simply the assistant who survived an attack. The brothers ask my opinion in rooms I was never invited into before. My judgment carries weight now, earned through everything we uncovered together, through every moment I refused to stay quiet, even when staying quiet would have been easier. Late one evening, Kiernan finds me in the garden again, the same spot where this entire nightmare cracked wide open weeks ago. "We never properly thanked you," he says, sitting beside me, "for refusing to disappear when it would have been easier." "I couldn't disappear," I tell him honestly. "Not after everything my mother sacrificed, trying to protect a truth she never got to finish uncovering herself." He's quiet for a moment, watching the same stars I've been watching. "Do you regret any of it? The bait, the danger, any of it?" I think about the question honestly before answering. I regret that it took nearly losing my life to learn the truth, but I don't regret choosing to fight for it instead of hiding from it. Riven and Soren join us eventually, the four of us sitting together under a sky that finally feels less threatening than it has in weeks. Nobody says much. Nobody needs to. Sometimes the most honest moments happen in the quiet between words, not inside them. I think about my mother often now, about the lesson she left behind, without ever meaning to teach it directly. Truth isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in fear, in danger, in nights that nearly cost you everything. But living inside someone else's carefully built lie, no matter how safe it feels, is never really living at all. The mystery of the photograph still sits unanswered in my mind, a door left slightly open for whatever comes next. But for tonight, for this exact moment sitting between three men who chose honesty over control when it mattered most, I finally let myself feel something I haven't felt in weeks. Peace, real and unforced, settling quietly into my chest like it finally found its way home. If you made it through this whole story with me, I want to hear from you. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story that inspires you the way this one inspired me to tell it. Drop a comment below and share what part of Caelan's journey hit you the hardest. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to read today.